Hello, hello. Welcome to the live stream. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. We'll give people a few seconds to join us live here. Welcome to the Zoom room or to the LinkedIn, wherever you're tuning in from today. I'll get kicked off in a little bit, but in the meantime, we always like to hear where you're tuning in from today. I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and since we're also doing a typography themed show today with our guest who's an expert in type, let us know what typeface you're feeling today. What typeface reflects your state of mind today? That could be a fun prompt as well. So let us know. You can think about that typeface one. All right, let's kick things off right at 4 p.m. Eastern on the dot. Hello and welcome to another edition of One Designer, One Work, a monthly event series from AIGA, the Professional Association for Design. In One Designer, One Work, if this is your first time here, we have one designer presenting a piece of creative work that has inspired and guided them along their professional journey. And I'm Lishan Huang, Director of Design Content and Learning here at AIGA. It's good to see more people coming in. Let us know what typeface of the moment is. Yep, Alicia, I know that's kind of an unfair prompt, but I thought I would just add a little bit of chaos today, see what happens. I'll go ahead and introduce our special guest presenter today. Today's one designer is Rachel Elnar, MFA. Rachel is a designer, educator, writer, community manager, event producer, and a true lover of typography. Currently, she is the Senior Product Marketing Manager of the Creative Jams program at Adobe, producing large-scale virtual education events for college students and creative professionals. She was the co-founder and partner of the Type Ed education program and Ramp Creative design firm with her late husband. Rachel was named as one of Graphic Design USA's People to Watch and has been a chapter lead for Type Thursday Los Angeles. She served on the advisory board of AIGA Orange County and is a lifer at AIGA Los Angeles. Before we get started with Rachel and her presentation, a friendly reminder of our code of conduct. Keep it friendly, keep it professional, keep it clean, and we'll be all good. So without any more ado from me, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel now. I'll come back and host the Q&A, but you can type in the Q&A pod at any time or type in the comments and we'll add your questions time permitting. So see you in a bit.
Thank you so much. I just want to say really quickly, excuse my getup. I'm not always in a 1970s disco nightclub. My team and I at Adobe, and including Alicia, we just finished recording a promo video for our game show called The Perfect Match. So thank you to Susan Augenbraun for the invite and Lishan also for that wonderful intro. Thank you so much to AIJ and the membership for the invitation to share our work. That is personally meaningful to me. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and we'll see how that goes. Here we go. Okay. You would think I would know how to do this already. So, okay. So to begin, I won't go through my life story, but I'm going to start with 2006. So 2006 was the year that I feel that I had started to come into my own as a designer and a director. I had quit teaching interaction and motion design as an adjunct faculty at Cal Poly Pomona University 3 years prior and was art directing and running a design business full-time. In 2006, I owned a design firm called Ramp Creative, with a beautiful office space in the historic district of beautiful downtown Los Angeles. Ramp Creative was already 5 years old and we had 2 employees. And that specific year, Ramp Creative's annual report had won 6 prestigious design awards, including the Black Book AR100 and the Appleton Coded Design Council. If you've been around for a while, you recognize those names. If not, that's okay. We were also profiled in the Logo Lounge 3, that was a long time ago, the Logo Lounge 3 book for our identity design work. And eventually the recognition press grew from there. Awards were such a big deal in 2006 because not only was it a way to show off your talent, but it was a way that graphic designers could amplify themselves and their work. Remember, there was no social media. Heck, There was no iPhone. In my AIGA life, however, 2006 was the year that I moved from the chair of public relations to a full-fledged member of the AIGA Los Angeles board, starting my term as VP of Communications. My heart felt full being a part of AIGA LA, helping local designers and students. And I was discovering a place within a design family being on this board, a sense of home, which I didn't feel that I had as a member. And I loved throwing parties and doing galas like this. Being a part of the AIGA LA board would also eventually open the doors to becoming an AIGA lifer, serving AIGA LA, Orange County, and supporting San Francisco. And in 2006, while doing production work on annual reports in our office, I really began to understand more about typography as an art and a science, starting a romance that would propel me into speaking publicly about type and sparking the beginnings of the Type Ed education program, which I co-founded to assist others to improve their skills with the goal of designing to help the reader. The Type Ed program grew both in person and online with close to 1,000 students. And it was also locally supported by a typography community in Los Angeles that I helped begin. And this was our Pachacucha typography talks. It was so much fun. 2006 was a year of acceleration for me and my partner in all of this, Michael Stinson. I have to say though, I'm a little biased. One work that I'd like to talk about and share with you today is a 2006 annual report that was designed and art directed in my studio by my then business and life partner, my late husband, Michael Stinson. Michael Stinson was an aerospace engineer major, with a focus on physics and mathematics before studying graphic design. He saw design as a form of drafting, and his approach was one with logic and planning. Whew. We met in a graphic design class at California State Polytechnic University, Pomona in 1992. He had just changed majors and already had a reputation of being very talented in his classes. I mean, he was a draftsman and the majority of design was done by hand. I don't have any images from 1992, but these are images of the Cal Poly art department as it is now. And even though our art department already had 2 Macs, that's 2, and an Apple Image Writer printer, graphic design was still a very manual process back then in the early 90s. I mean, we would print out type from this huge printer and then trim it with X-Acto knives, which you always had on you. Run it through the wax machine, which would coat wax on the back of your paper, and then place the type carefully onto layout boards for production. Yeah, that's right. The art department classes were on producing mechanicals on boards, how to do markup on acetate overlays, and prep boards to send to a print shop. This is Michael's school project with preparing some of those mechanicals. That laser printer could only print on plain white paper. So for presentation comps, when we did projects in school, we had to send type to have INTs made. Does anyone remember INTs? These were like custom rub down letters. And then you would dry transfer the rub down graphics to paper stock. And man, if you messed up, it really cost you time and money because you have to go back and order them again, and you would have to pay for them again. So Michael graduated with his graphic design degree at Cal Poly Pomona in 1993. And he then took on some jobs working on ads, logos, and annual reports, all produced by hand. I mean, Quark Express 3.0 had just been released and was being very slowly adopted by studios and print shops in Southern California, mostly because of the instability of the technology. He was working at that time, while he was doing that, the industry was going through a very, very difficult transition of moving from manual to digital. Michael was tasked with translating the traditionally passed down graphic production rules and proportions that you had to know, like on the back of your hand. One could not really design by eye back then. Everything had to be lined up to a grid. It had to be exact when ordering photostats. He had to figure out how many lines would fit onto a page with math, something that I don't do much, depending on the width of the typeface and the width of the columns and the alleys. This is some work he did in his first internship out, which was at MoCA. It was those numeric formulas that Michael took and used to give him the ability to produce up to 8 end reports at the same time, like these. I mean, let me talk a little bit about end reports. In the 1990s, end report design was a thing in Los Angeles. Robert Miles Runyon created the modern financial report as a storytelling tool in the 50s and 60s. And out of his firm grew a whole family of amazing designers, many who Michael had admired, and also he worked with in Los Angeles, like Joni Labrea. By the time I met up with him again in 2000, he was an art director in Costa Mesa. His boss had hired me to come in and build some websites for their clients and train their staff. And I was really surprised to see Michael there as a very accomplished art director and known for his work in the annual report design circles in LA and San Francisco. Michael had a slew of design awards under his belt, from Communication Arts, Graphies, Potlatch, Black Book, and the one show, Graphies. Potlatch, oh my God, Potlatch was a paper stock. Okay, just saying if you don't know. And of course, his work for Quicksilver, which I love this one specifically, was sent to the CEO's house and was on his doorstep the next morning after it was printed. And the wet seal. This work always showed up consistently in the design annuals. Really, really beautiful work. So in 2001, we formed Ramp Creative, where he would produce all the print stuff and I would take on the interactive side of all projects. And this was our very beginning stationery set and folders and labels and whatnot we would send out to people. So getting back to 2006, towards the end of the year, we met with our ongoing client, CWS Capital Partners, a very successful and smart real estate investment management company, otherwise known as a REIT. During the annual report kickoff project meeting, they had brought up a new challenge in their business. Many of their elder investor customers had passed down their investments to younger generations, but then their families, their kids, and their nieces. And not all of the newer beneficiaries were reinvesting back into the REIT. So they needed help with two things. Number one, reaffirming the benefits of investment growth to young investors. And two, communicating how the company's strategic financial decisions created consistent long-term value. And by the way, this photo that you're seeing is not a stock photo. This is one that we directed for their website. Everyone's smiling, so it does look like a stock photo. Michael's favorite part was the discovery stage. He loved learning, researching, and brainstorming. I love watching his brain light up and see the magic happen. He came up with at least 10 ideas and pushed them until they didn't work. And he thought out how a concept would translate to each section and part of the overall corporate story. He thought a lot about puns and how they translated into themes. He thought in numbers. Like he counted the letters to see how a theme could be represented visually. He thought about form factor and how building the pages could support the concept. He also researched illustrative styles and did a deep dive on typefaces that would echo the idea. I pulled this artwork from his folder of research for this specific project. Afterwards, he decided on 3 comps, or we decided together, and then he proceeded to mock up all 3 full designs with FPL art in printed form to bring to our meetings. So we would always show up with 3 full books, 3 ideas, so they could go through each page and really understand the story. One of the design concepts Michael had presented to the client for the 2006 annual report was called circulating value. Michael felt that circulation was a part of life, and the circulation of money really fuels economic growth, which in turn allows for the allocation of money to its highest and best use. He proposed that 2006 was the year of circulating value at CWS. And CWS partners really loved the direction. They went home with this comp and they passed it around, and I don't even think we got it back, so I couldn't even show you the original comp. Typically, a go from the client meant that he could spend on research. We would put that into the budget. And this was fun for me when we had an Italian chocolate client. But for this report, he really enjoyed purchasing obsolete banknotes and stock certificates, items of value. And I took these photos of his currency collection. I mean, we have a whole book and I just didn't bring it today. But during the 20th century, American currency incorporated numerous ornamental features, mostly as a part of anti-counterfeiting efforts, like these guilloche patterns. Guilloche patterns are an intricate, repetitive pattern designed with parametric equations like spirographs and mechanically engraved for precision and delicacy. Now, if you've had the childhood toy called the spirograph, then you have an idea of how it works. But here you see some guilloche patterns behind the number 1 on the right. And because they were so intricate and nearly impossible to reproduce, banknotes and stock certificates were very difficult to forge. They were almost just as difficult in producing this report. I mean, Michael designed all the type. Claire DeLeon and Angela Kim worked on the guilloche patterns. It just took forever to design. And illustrator Steve Noble was commissioned to create line drawings of the buildings, the landscapes, steel engravings, and portraits. Each chapter spread had to live in its own separate InDesign file because the illustrator art took so long to render when opening the files. But after 2 months of production, here is the final project, 40 pages plus a wraparound cover. So again, this project is called Circulating Value, CWS Capital Partners LLC 2006 annual report. The cover incorporated a banknote belly band graphic that wrapped around the front of the cover. These types of belly bands were wrapped around printed currency when cash was dispersed from the bank. I don't know if you've ever gotten a stack of cash from the bank, but they always have these belly bands that are wrapped around the stack of cash. The inside front cover, which is a gatefold, so it opens up like this. The first page was intro copy that connected the concept to the business. And then the next section was their yearly performance summary. Michael wanted it to look like a handwritten ledger, and the headlines were written with his mother's handwriting. So she was so happy to be part of the project. And then the first chapter break spread. This was the letter to investors written by the 5 partners of the company. Michael also loved adding little Easter eggs into artwork. So 04141976, so that's April 14, 1976, that's designer Claire's birthday, and then 05 was her favorite number. Circulate or Die is President Gary Carmel's letter. All the letters were really written closely tied to the theme. So if you read through the whole thing, it talks about circulating value, talks about currency, talks about money. It really just ties back into the full concept. And then the founders, Steve Sherwood and Bill Williams, had their own letters. And finally, the senior VPs. The next chapter break was the investment opportunities demonstrated by 8 different regions. And here, the top number 090501, whoops, that went too fast, right there, is his daughter's birthday. All right, so Austin region. Again, the images, the illustrations were done by Steve Noble, again, to look like currency. Dallas-Fort Worth, San Antonio, and then the Atlanta region. In the middle of these regions was the existing property list and information about when each of those properties were built, acquired, unit numbers, and so on. And then we had a historic looking map of where the existing properties were located. And again, they're designed, this whole map was designed to the concept theme. And then we go into Charlotte, Raleigh, the Denver region, and Canada. All the information here is about economic trends and what's happening in the area, what are the names of the property, how many units. The third chapter break was about the people and the 15 programs within their company. This says, one company, 5 values are true assets. And the numbers on the right, 07/12/71, that's my birth date, and 05/02/1970, that's Michael's birthday. On the lower left here is LASMML, which stands for our partners within CWS, Loretta Anderson, Sunny Mills, and Marcus Lamb. This spread highlights their community programs and lists their corporate officers. And then the last page lists the awards of the company that they won that year. And inside the back cover of the gatefold holds a CD-ROM designed to look like a penny and holds deeper financials about each of the properties. So it looks like this. I know, I'm probably a small thumbnail, so you can't really see it, but I'll show you afterwards. Again, the artwork from the front cover wraps around the back cover continuously, so you can see here. Michael had said in an interview that the design incorporates graphics and typography from obsolete American currency throughout the layout to give the reader the idea that the report and the information within it was valuable. In response to the work, it was amazing. So this is just a shot of the annual Black Book AR 100. Oh, actually, this is a shot of the Graphice and Reports Annual 2007. We won gold, and this is the spread of the inclusion in the annual. We also got other awards, including the annual Black Book AR 100 award show. Oh, and we also were included in a couple typography books, so that was really cool. The recognition led to Michael being a juror for the Graphice Best Annual Report Design of 2009. And he loved being part of the process and reviewing, discussing, and narrowing down some of the best design from 500 reports produced from all over the world and being a part of the design community. And the reason why this work holds so much meaning to me is not that it was one of the most time-consuming projects for us to produce, but also that it demonstrates that form follows function. From its type choices to the guilloches, to illustrations, to paper choice, to the printing process and the form factor, all design choices and marks on the page should have a reason for being. And everything on the page has its purpose to communicate. I mean, great design demonstrates value definitely beyond the paper it's printed on. Michael designed over 80 annual reports in his lifetime, and the 2006 CWS Capital Partners Annual Report was definitely my favorite. And what's not shown here is some of the lanyards and other things that that we produced as well. Again, goes with the whole thing. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that project, Rachel. We have some audience questions already, so let's just jump straight to the audience and I'll weave them in our conversation. Marina wants to know, how long did it take him to do all of this?
To produce this report from start to finish, I mean, usually we would go in to for the kickoff meeting 6 months prior. Design would take a month and a half. And then production would take about 2 months, and then we would go back and forth to the printer for a month to a month and a half. So, hey, Marina, thank you so much for asking.
And when a report like this was produced, like, would you get like repeat customers from the same company? Would it be a different identity year after year, or would it like be a system and it would like evolve but still be within the same visual language?
That really depends on the client. So for CWS, we did their annual report for 15 years, and each one did not look like this. We had a new theme. Gosh, I wish I brought all of them. But so it was totally different, and it was because the client allowed us some creative freedom, and they were good with us taking whatever the one or two top priority messages that they had and developing a theme around it. Some clients are, especially investor relations, not so much fun. They're just a little more conservative. So you really do have to work with the client in order to make that decision.
So how have you seen things change between 2006, and it seems like your work really represents this golden age of these annual reports, to today, where there might just be a PDF or just a website that reports back this sort of information? Like, how have you seen that part of our industry change for you?
I actually don't know. I mean, really, annual reports was Michael's thing. We did see it once, I think in 2015, the SEC required everything to be just filed electronically, not printed. And that really definitely changed, the Robert Miles Runyon era of creating printed annual reports as a marketing piece. So now, I mean, it's all just done electronically, sent with a 10K or, I mean, sometimes they have small wraps. I don't know. I'm now in the digital world, so.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing to follow up on, because you chose this very tangible print piece as your one work today. But since you are working more in the digital world now, like, are there things that you carry over from that? It's clearly marked you, and obviously it's very personal because it was work with Michael. But how do you think about that era and that very tactile kind of stuff, which is also before my time with the rub-on text and all of these sort of things? But now things are relatively easier, or you make a choice and you can kind of see it right away. But is there anything from that more analog era that still you take with today, or take with you today?
Personally, for me, I would say it probably affected my teaching a lot. Like, I would watch my students take a text box and move it around the screen until it just felt right. I mean, you couldn't do that back then. Everything had to be planned, and then they would scroll through lists of fonts just to figure out what would look good. You couldn't do that. You had to know the width of the type, right? You had to know what it could do, how it performed per se. To me, those people who really understand those tools, and this goes for everything, really understands the power of their tools, they are the ones who produce much more, I would say, effective work that stands the test of time. A lot of things are done digitally, but I feel like having those rules and those ideals in place definitely makes a difference in the work.
Thank you. We have a question in the Q&A pod from Ahmad, who's interested in taking a deeper look at some of the examples you showed in the presentation. Are any of these available in an online gallery or a link that you could share?
If you go to michaelstinson.design or michaelstinson.com, his work is still up there in the on his websites. So go ahead and check it out.
Thanks, Rachel.
Or I mean, if he's around, I have some of these samples. If you'd like one, I can definitely send it out.
Awesome. And this is also being recorded as well. So if folks want to watch the recording, you can also just rewind and see them on your screen. I guess this is related to my previous question, but we have an anonymous question wondering how you apply the lesson from Michael's design point of view to the work you do now.
Well, let's see. We still do a lot of graphics within Adobe. And I just feel like in order to pivot, so for example, what I do now is post a lot of creative jams. Oh my gosh, I'm getting all mixed up. A lot of creative jams, and like the show, The Perfect Match. With the creative jams, we do switch different partners, different colors, and different themes and whatnot. And in order to do that, it's all in how the file is produced. So, if you have to change colors, as long as you build the file correctly, it can be changed really quickly. And Michael always looked at his students' work, not in terms of the finished look and feel, but also he wanted the working files. He wanted to see how well it was built, make sure everything was on the grid, make sure everything was produced correctly, because that is, just responsible, good file hygiene, what you should send to the printer. And it really reduces the amount of cost going back and forth with the printer, because they can figure it out, they understand your system, and also your colleagues can do so as well. So yes, I still try to build my files as tight as possible.
Awesome. That's a great reminder for me. I was like, oh, I hope nobody sees my Photoshop files. What is the perfect match, by the way, this set that you're on?
Okay, so the perfect match is kind of a fun thing that we created for designers, is a game show. We invite people to create mood boards with Adobe stock, and they submit them, and they can get onto the game show and win $1,000. So I have, for the longest time, I mean, especially being part of AIGA, have loved the design community, have always hosted events as everybody else who's been with AIGA and done board work. Excuse me. And, really understands the designer psyche. So this is what we created virtually to make it fun.
Awesome. And you mentioned your teaching as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about the teaching side of your practice?
Well, I feel right now within Adobe, we're doing a lot of education work. We're teaching students skills, how to go from their classroom to their career, how to present, how to use software, how to talk to mentors. There's a lot of that happening in a virtual space within our Creative Jam competitions. On and off for the last 22 years, I've been working as adjunct faculty at Cal Poly Pomona, Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Los Angeles, Art Center College of Design. So yeah, I've taught in many places, and I just bring all that experience into what we do at Adobe.
Wonderful. And so you've shown us an example from 2006 as your one work today. Do you have examples of things that are contemporary, either it's like individual designers or companies that are inspiring you now that you might want to suggest to our audience today?
Well, I love a lot of, right now I'm really into hand lettering and really strong typography. In terms of really deep dive storytelling, I always go back to the annual reports. I mean, Michael and I had he had a collection of 2,000 annual reports that we donated to the letter form archive. But I mean, it was so much fun just going through them and seeing, I mean, there's just nothing like print. I'm so sorry, but there's something about it that allows you to create that pace, adjust to how you perceive, and then also use typography in a much more expressive way than you can do digitally. So I don't have any at the top of my head, but I did love, I would just have to go back into some historic stuff. So yeah, I mean, Herman Miller and reports, of course, some of the great ones. Kim Baer did some great work as well. Even Danny Yont, who does beautiful digital work. He does a lot of movie intros for Iron Man and whatnot. He used to work at Digital Kitchen and did annual report stuff before then. So I mean, the typography going from printed page and moving to other mediums really translates once you really get that.
Fantastic. We have a question from Katie now. Any advice on how to break into the annual report market to do design work for annual reports?
I don't know if there's an annual report market anymore. I mean, I really, Littleton kind of like kicked it off in the 1950s with Robert Miles Runyon. I don't think it is a thing anymore. I mean, if anything, you want to stay in print, I would say probably get back to like brand suites, creating marketing materials, doing either brand guidelines, if that sounds like fun. It's not that much fun, but it's okay. Book design is a lot of fun as well. But marketing, brochures and whatnot. I mean, those are still things that you can create a nice, beautiful printed story with. And also check out a lot of paper promos. I mean, that was the most fun thing for me to do when I go to AIGA conferences, is pick up all those paper promos. Some of the stuff that Nina produces is just amazingly gorgeous. Go through, see how they really play with different paper stocks and also sizes as well. How they have inserts, understand die cuts. That would be where I would say to start.
Awesome. We have a question/request from Kay. Basically, like, why should working designers teach now and not at some point in the future when they retire?
Well, I think that design changes so fast that the things that you learn and you cherish and that are useful to you won't exist in the next 6 months. Unfortunately, there are some things that go with technology that might not apply, but I think that the fundamentals, those fundamentals, lessons that you learn, going back to readability, contrast, color, things that working on the printed page versus like the screen, anything that I would say to teach it now. To wait you to retire might be a slightly irrelevant. So yeah, or hard for people to understand how it connects.
Yeah, I'm going to bite on this one too, because it's such a great prompt. I think it's worth thinking about teaching and learning as like a triangle that's 3 ways. Like, we often traditionally think about oh, you're the teacher and you're delivering your knowledge to your students, which you are, but that's only one side of the triangle, right? The
Right.
teacher to student, the students are learning from each other. That's the second side. And then you're also learning from the students back, especially these days, right? They're, like, you at Adobe, you're producing amazing content. There's like tons of stuff on YouTube. Like, I have my MFA students look on YouTube tutorials as well, because there's just not enough class time to do every single thing that students want to learn. So it's all part of this ecosystem. So you're getting something back too when you're teaching. So do consider doing that before you retire from professional practice.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, you really, really get something back. A lot of Michael's lessons, he just knew in the back of his head, but he didn't know why. It's kind of like teaching a language that you spoke all your life. But when you start to teach it, then you say, these are the rules. This is why it makes sense, right? This is why Spanish is spoken this way.
Totally.
Well, a lot of Michael's sound bites that his students brought on, always absorbed, was the things that he learned by teaching as well. Like, you have to really review the material and figure out, why is this important? Why is it relevant? And why is it effective for readers?
Awesome. Any more questions from the audience? I'm going to do a last call here if anyone wants to type them in the chat or in the Q&A pod. If not, I'll turn it back to Rachel and see if there's any final parting thoughts of wisdom that you want to give us today before we take it out.
No, not really. I mean, like I kept saying in the talk that design awards might not be very important to those who are like just putting their stuff out on social media or whatnot. But I think there is something about this community, not necessarily validation, but also just reflection. Get your stuff out in front of other people, whether it is a small critique between you and, getting in front of Type Thursday and getting some feedback, or you getting a design award and having, lots of people take a look at your work. I mean, I think that's really what propels us forward in the creative space, is being able to have this dialogue and our work evolving as we move forward.
Awesome. And actually, I wanted to loop it back to that icebreaker question that I posed at the beginning. We got some responses over at LinkedIn as well. So Brittany said that she was feeling Gotham. Somebody else said Bodoni was their typeface for their vibe today. I'm often Cooper Black in terms of my type vibe. I don't know if you want to try to take this one, Rachel. Do you have a type of the day for you right now?
I would just say probably Harriet. And yeah, Harriet is a great one by OK Type. It's something that I use a lot because its italics are beautiful, and it's what you saw today on the presentation.
Awesome. Actually, we got one last minute audience question, so we can get Poyea's question in here too for Rachel, if you got time. What training and experience was required to reach their position or creative path? I guess, like, how did you, let me just interpret that because I don't fully understand the question, but at what point did you feel like you were ready to teach from your practicing design to going back to teach?
Well, okay. So I got my MFA. And so there was already a little bit of uh, like planning that I was going to teach. Michael did not get his MFA. So he taught at Laguna College of Art and Design. You can teach at art and design schools like Art Center without having an MFA. I think it's just the feeling of wanting to give back, and B, Michael really started teaching because he got a response of like, oh my God, how come I didn't know that? Oh my God, that lesson really helped my work better. Or, oh my, my client really thought that this work turned out better. It's that response, it's that dialogue. And if you get that back, then I think it's time for you to unveil your secrets, because we want to know.
Definitely.
Yeah. And in terms of Poya's asking what training or experience was required, I mean, for me specifically, I'm a marketing person at Adobe, and I work with designers and students and faculty. I've had teaching in the past. I've done type ed and worked with small in-house teams. We used to train at Activision and Blizzard and Living Spaces and things like that. I mean, like, DIY your education, just put it all together. And as long as you do what you love, something is just bound to get to you. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would also add, if you're already like managing designers and mentoring them within a studio or a company, like that gets you ready for teaching in a classroom, or like just dip your toes in the water, like start with a guest workshop or something. You don't have to sign up to teach a whole semester class right away and gain experience that way.
Yeah, I would usually invite some of my friends to come in and just talk in my class. Just do a 1 hour talk and really get used to talking to students. I mean, there's 30, 25 or 30 different personalities there you have to adjust to and you have to answer to. And just doing a 1 hour talk is a great way just to get started.
Awesome. Well, Rachel, Elnar, thank you again for presenting at One Designer, One Work today in March 2022 edition here at AIGA. We look forward to seeing you all back next month for our next One Designer, One Work. So with that, I'll say goodbye and have a great week, everyone. Until next time.